How are we doing, guys? And welcome back to All These TV. It's been a while since we've done an opposition preview. It's been a while since I've been on the channel, to be fair. Apologies for my little delay. Again, just a couple of personal things, family life, bits and pieces, just general Christmas madness. But I am back, guys. I'm back with the opposition preview with my good mate, Corey Kemp from the West Ham Way. How's things, mate? It's I think since we last spoke, it's not been so good for West Ham. Am I right in saying it's been a bit of a drop-off in form?
It has over a month. It has got better recently. Obviously, we got a result against Watford and Palace, and we do look a bit stronger going forward. But I can't lie. I think before those games, we'd won about 5 points out of a possible 21. So, yeah, you are right. It has been tight. Injuries have hurt us. I'm sure you know about injuries as much as we do, probably more so. So, we'll get into it. It's kind of a fixture, I feel, where neither team really needs it in a way. I know we're at different ends of the table, but at the same time, we've got our own things to concentrate on. So it's going to be an interesting one on Sunday in terms of team selection.
That's an interesting comment, because the first thing I was going to lead into was about how seriously, from a West Ham point of view, you were going to take the cup this season, because I look at it from an outsider looking in. Obviously, when I say West Ham have dropped off, I mean, it's not been that bad a run for results-wise. You've still won a couple of games. You hammered Watford, as you've already said. But do you look at it now and still look at it and say, obviously, Tottenham have been rejuvenated under Antonio Conte. Arsenal obviously had a good season under Arteta so far. And, you know, other clubs like that are in and around the top four. Do you still see the top four as realistic? I guess is the first question before it leads into the next question. Is it still realistic for West Ham?
It should be on paper. I kind of feel that at the minute there's a lot of false positions. I think Tottenham could pull away and they could get 2 wins and they would look a lot more comfortable. I think Arsenal as well are in a similar position. Obviously, they beat us 2-0, which would have been a game that if you're talking about West Ham competing for top four or being in the 4th spot, that we should have gone and won or at least got a result from. So I don't think it is. We are still there. We are still in the conversation. For me, I feel that this month's so crucial for West Ham continuing to be in and around those spaces. And there are still opportunities for us to at least compete with that. So I'd love a cup run. I really, really would. And I've always said before that a cup over a placed finish would be better. At the same time, you look at the club, you look at where we're going, you look at how consistent we've been over 18 months. I kind of feel that Moyes is going to want to cement a position in the league. So I'm not convinced he's fully in on it, but he'll always give it a go. He'll never throw a game. So I suppose I've got that to look forward to.
I guess that's the thing with West Ham. Obviously, even if you do go over weaker teams on Sunday, it's still going to be a strong West Ham team. You know, he's still got good, rotation options. I think one of the things we spoke about last season, especially last season, obviously when we had before the whistle blows on All These TV, I think the big thing we spoke about was West Ham's depth. But to be fair, it looks better now. Is that fair to say? From an outsider looking in, it does look better, your depth. I mean, Vlasic, I know you're a big fan of in the 10 role. Is it likely players like that will probably come in for this game, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think there'll be strong rotation. I think what Moyes has got spot on this season is he's played players out of position, or maybe you'll see off Masuaku as a left-hand side attacking midfielder. So he has implemented that in the cup previously. I expect to see that. I think you are right about the depth slightly. I think we have more depth in the number 10 positions, and I think Lanzini coming back into form has really helped that. Defensively, we did have good depth, but obviously at the minute we've got so many injuries in that department, particularly left back and centre back, that it has become a problem. Nonetheless, I still think there are players to come in. Vlasic, like you mentioned, has improved. We haven't seen enough of �K𝐎, and obviously we've brought him in the summer, and I think he's a player that I like the look of, and I expect to play in this game. Then you've got other players like Mark Noble, who, let's be honest, at this stage of his career, he is a rotation option.
He's FA Cup man, isn't he? He's League Cup, FA Cup man.
I love him. I love him to bits. I do. I think he did well against Watford, if I'm honest. And I've always been saying with Noble, it's clear that his athleticism, he never really was an athletic player, but possibly more box to box, that Moyes needs to manage him correctly. And I think when you've got the balance of him obviously sitting between the two centre-backs and trying to dictate the play a little bit more, and someone alongside him, maybe �K𝐎, maybe Souček will play, then I think the balance is fine. I don't want him to go start pressing against Leeds United, because it's only going to lead to one thing. So hopefully Moyes has got that sussed.
And you mentioned about the centre-halves issue. I mean, what would you expect to be your starting 2 centre-backs against Leeds? I know Craig Dawson's come in. He did well last season, but this season he's kind of gone back to being Craig Dawson a little bit this season. I don't know if that's harsh to say.
Probably from the outside in, I think he's had mixed games. I can't get away from it. He's had games where he's had shocking moments. I think as a defender, Craig Dawson's obviously got his limitations. I think West Ham this season, we've come up against teams where we're expected to dominate the play a little bit more, be a bit more positive in possession. And obviously you've seen his weaknesses that are already there. I'd probably argue that the weaker of the centre-backs is Diop. And I think that's because of his lack of decisiveness, not even his physicality. I think a lot of West Ham fans will tell you he's got all the attributes to be a fantastic defender, but in terms of decision-making, positioning, confidence, there's something mentally with Diop that's stopping him progressing. So I think actually, if you're looking at a weakness, it would be him at centre-back.
I mean, we've had a bit of team news ourselves. It looks like Joffrey Gelhardt and Tyler Roberts are both out for this game. Certainly this game, it looks like they're out for. There's a bit of news we've had today as such. It looks like Patrick Bamford may well start this game, or there's a good chance Patrick Bamford will start this game, because obviously we've got a lot of strikers out of the team at this moment in time. It probably only really leaves Patrick Bamford, despite him not starting the game since Newcastle away. September, that was mid-September, so it's a long time. But I would argue the FA Cup's a good opportunity to get him fresh for the league game. You know, in terms of if Diop and Dawson's likely to be your centre backs now for the next couple of weeks because of injuries, might be a good little opportunity that for Patrick Bamford. Do you think is that something that worries you a little bit, Bamford, against those two centre backs going into this game?
Definitely. I think maybe you look at pressing. I'm not sure how fit Bamford is if he is along that line. I imagine Bielsa will only bring him back if he's ready and raring to go. So I think pressing, if West Ham are going to try and play out from the back's an issue. I think more so probably the movement of Bamford that obviously goes under the radar. I know he scored a lot of goals last season from those type of movements. He scored against us, of course, at Ellen Road from exactly that same type of angle. So it's so important. And I wonder whether Bielsa is going to target, obviously, Dawson's lack of athleticism, but Diop's indecisiveness at times. I think if you can get Patrick Bamford on the shoulder, it would worry me massively. That back four has to learn. We aren't going to sit deep against you. That's my only concern. And I don't think Moyes will do that at home, in which case they have to be switched on, because I think Bamford's a fantastic striker. And I suppose for you, it's been a shame that he's not been fully fit, because not only does he offer goals, he offers pressing. And from the front, that's been so important for Leeds.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. I think I would make a strong argument Bamford's arguably the most important player in the team in terms of what he offers and how unique it is what he offers. You know, 25 goals he was involved in last season, 17 goals, 8 assists, you know, the pressing from the front. And when he's played this season, he's scored or assisted. I think it's five goal contributions in 6 games, I think it is. It might be, and they're not all starts either. So, you know, he's still maintained that form despite being kind of like stop-start, you know, in terms of the start to the season for him. But yeah, it'd be a massive boost, I think, just psychologically, I think, seeing Bamford on the pitch for Leeds fans, because it's not something we're seeing much of this season, and it's definitely affected us in different ways in different types of games. But I think in the last couple of weeks, to be fair, certainly against Burnley, we found a bit of a solution to it. We had obviously Tyler started up top against Burnley. Although he didn't score, he got a lot of chances in the game, which is always a good sign for me. Yes, people will argue he probably should have took maybe 1 or 2 of the chances. And I think Tyler will probably feel like himself, but as long as he gets into their positions, I'm happy with that. It makes us play better. Joffrey Gelhardt came on, fantastic ball into Dan James for our 3rd goal. So it's a bit of a blow. Well, it's a massive blow having both players out. Because I thought there were very much positives against Burnley. So yeah, it'd be interesting how fit Bamford is. Whether it was always the plan to bring Bamford in, I'm not sure, but yeah, it's always the way, I think, with an FA Cup kind of 3rd round game for a Premier League team or even a Championship team, is that you just don't know what kind of team you're going to play. You know, sometimes, you know, in a League Cup, you kind of know that it's going to be your second team that's going to come in. But in this game, I'm thinking, I don't know, we've obviously moved a little bit further clear of the bottom 3. Maybe we could take it a little bit more, you know, in terms of put the full team out, because I think what I want to avoid, Corey, going into this, and I'm sure you'll be the same, I don't want to get beaten heavily in this, because I think psychologically then going into the game next week, that's a bit of a blow to me. I mean, would you feel like that with West Ham in terms of if you lost this game at home to us? Would that be a massive psychological blow going into next week?
It's a good point, actually. I haven't really thought of it like that. I think I can't see it being the case, because I think Moyes will rotate enough for it not to be the same team. I think there'll be key outliers. I don't think Declan Rice will play. Maybe he will. If he does, you're looking at Noble next to him, so there's no Souček. Antonio, I don't think, will play either. So I think the team that will play against Leeds in the league will be completely different from the team in the cup. In that case, I kind of feel that they'll be protected a little bit from that. But you are right to say, I think tactically it'll be so interesting to see, because I think Moyes, throughout his tenure really at West Ham, has always improved in the second fixture of the season. I thought we were naive against you first half, and you were fantastic. And West Ham have to be, I don't want maybe more pragmatic. I think sometimes we just have to sit the foot off the gas and say we're not a fantastic pressing team. We struggle a little bit under pressure, and I think play to our strengths, and again we'll be fine. But you might be right. If we got beat 3-0, then it may affect us, particularly when we've got Norwich, and it's a short turnaround for us from Sunday to Wednesday. So it's a big week in that sense.
Well, that's another factor as well, actually. I hadn't really properly considered the fact that you've got a game in between this, and we haven't. We've just got the straight run between now and West Ham next Sunday. So whether that might even come into Moyes' thinking, even because I think a lot of in the Cup as well, I don't know if you'd agree with this, mate. I think a lot of the substitutions are kind of predetermined. In the sense that we only want him to play an hour. We only want him to play half an hour off the bench. I feel like sometimes that's not necessarily a bad thing. I just think sometimes that can be the case, and that it wouldn't surprise me if Moyes maybe goes along those lines, maybe, and says, okay, say for example, if Jared Bowen started the game, I don't think he'd play Jared Bowen for a full 90 against us. If you've got Norwich kind of in between, would you agree with that?
No, it's happened before. Obviously, we had a little bit of a cut run, albeit we lost to Spurs in the end. But when we played against Man City, we played a rotated team. I expected us to be a little bit stronger, but we brought on, I think it was Bowen, Ben Rama, and Fornals in the 60th minute. So that was premeditated, and I would expect him to go for a similar approach if he starts with Yarmolenko at false nine. That maybe if it's 0-0 and it's tight, you bring on Bowen or you bring on Fornals. It's a tough one, Oscar, if I'm honest, because Moyes just will never throw a game. We won't go into the game even with a rotated team and think that there's a ridiculous drop-off. They're not interested. And I think that's kind of been the credit to David Moyes. But I would expect someone like Bowen. I'd expect someone possibly like, I think Vlasic will start. Bowen will be the main outlier. Fornals may start. But other than that, there are players I don't think he'll risk. I just don't think he'll risk Antonio, and it's just purely because of injury and fatigue. And Antonio looked a lot better against Palace because of the break. So he's the player I wouldn't expect. So it's probably a plus point for you, because I just, for the life of me, I can't see him playing.
I mean, obviously, we've kind of hinted at the fact that the priority still feels like the league and maybe even the Europa League. When that comes back around, it comes back around, isn't it? Mid-Feb. But I don't know about you, mate. If I was, again, outside looking in, if I'm David Moyes, I'm looking at Brendan Rodgers last season winning the FA Cup with Leicester, and ultimately, let's be honest, Leicester were 10 minutes away from making the top four. They bottled it in the end, but they were literally 10 minutes away from making the top four. So you can't even say like the cup run cost them kind of thing. They were still there and thereabouts. I mean, do you not even look at obviously the fact that David Moyes, for all his success at Everton, elsewhere at West Ham, he hasn't actually won that domestic trophy. An FA Cup, the League Cup, league titles. Could this be his biggest opportunity that he might get? In terms of with West Ham.
Yeah, possibly.
Not just, I wasn't having a go at Leeds, by the way, of that. I was just saying in the sense that the way the squad is, the fact you still got Declan Rice at the club, the depth obviously was spoken about. It's surely a good opportunity, isn't it?
It is and it is and it isn't. The squad at the minute, I kind of feel is, and a lot of West Ham fans may agree, is that something's got to give at some point. And I wonder whether, because of the injuries we've had, if we were sitting here and we were saying Zuma's fit or Bonner's fit, that the rotation options are still on the bench and they're fresh, and we managed the FA Cup in the same way that we've been able to manage the Europa League, I'd be sitting here and saying, there's a fantastic opportunity. Let's go and get to a quarter-final. Let's bring in the strongest team and let's have a go. And I've said before, a trophy over a place for me is so crucial. I just wonder whether, because of where the squad is at the minute, it does need reinforcements, I feel, for West Ham to compete in that kind of those 6th, 5th places. It's not where it needs to be. So I don't think he's going to throw a lot at it, if I'm honest. I'd love it. I really, really would. I'm just worried that the team will not be able to sustain it, given the fact that we'll have Europa League fixtures coming back in March. You'll then have the FA Cup. It's sandwiched in between. If it's still tight in March, between 4th and 6th and 7th, and West Ham still have a chance, it's going to throw us off a bit. It is a good opportunity. I just don't know if this squad can go the full way, and I don't know whether Moyes is going to take that risk.
No, interesting stuff. I mean, obviously outside, inside of it, it's a very different way of looking at things, I guess. And when you're kind of living living in that moment as well as a West Ham fan, it must be absolutely amazing. Considering, when we obviously first spoke, it's only 18 months ago when we first kind of met. I mean, you were talking about relegation battles. I mean, it's just mad how quickly things can turn around, isn't it?
Quite rightly, yeah. We were awful. We were terrible. I was on All Stats Aren't We the other day, and I was saying that when you watch West Ham 18 months ago compared to now, it's so difficult to change your expectations. And so if you told me 2 years ago, would you want to go on a cut run, that I would throw every single thing at it. And I could never understand why anyone would be any different. And then all of a sudden you're in a position where as a club, you realise you're punching above your weight and there's an opportunity here to either get far into a European competition, then to kind of stabilise yourself in those positions in the league and build and develop in terms of playing squad. And that's kind of where my thinking's gone very, very quickly in the space of a season, where I kind of feel that West Ham need to go deep into a Europa League competition. When you're looking at players like Declan Rice, when you've got people like Liverpool sniffing around Jarrod Bowen, you've got to be able to show some kind of ambition in these competitions. And I think I kind of feel that that's where our bread and butter is now. Irrespective, don't get me wrong, I kind of feel that Arsenal and Spurs are off on better footings. If you look at the squads compared to one another, you'd argue that the other two have got an advantage over us. But we're here because we're good enough, and then we've just simply got to iron out a couple of those mistakes, get a couple of injuries back, and get a couple of signings. So it's a huge month for us. It's a massive month. We'll know by the end of the month.
Do you think it'll be a busy one for West Ham? Do you expect big signings this month? Is there anyone you've been linked with at this moment in time?
A lot of it's just hearsay. So obviously 𝐘𝐿𝐷's been linked with the move away. I don't think that's going to happen, and I think that's because of his attitude. And Moyes is quite reluctant to go and bring him in. I think he also looks at Cresswell, and Cress would be our first choice. I think there's a conversation at West Ham to have a long-term left back when Cresswell gets a little bit older and there is a decline. The striker's a big thing, Oscar. I think if West Ham are going to get anything done in this window, getting a number 9 in is crucial. And we've had Mikel Antonio come out today and say, I need someone to challenge me. And when you've got your only striker at the club that's saying that, there's importance on it. And I feel that with the rumours, normally when you hear stuff, it's very, very tepid. This time it feels a bit stronger. So I do expect us to get a striker. It will probably be towards the end of the window though, because that's just how we work.
Would you expect the striker just to be a backup to Antonio? So maybe not like a big name as such, but someone who's maybe good enough to step in. I think obviously one name that obviously comes up quite a lot in terms of, because I think when you get to January, it's always a case of, I think the teams outside the top 6, certainly fans of teams outside the top 6. Who's the top scorer in the Championship right now? I'm just looking at the top scorer charts, and obviously Ben Brereton Diaz has got a lot of mention. I still think if he was just called Ben Brereton, the interest wouldn't be there, to be fair. But Ben Brereton Diaz, I mean, would that be maybe something West Ham would look at, possibly?
Do you know what's really tough about it is you kind of look at a lot of teams and the manager or the club are quite vocal about the player that they want to bring in. I still am really unsure about the type of player that Moyes wants to bring in. Does he want to bring in a natural number 9? Does he want a player that can just rotate and do exactly the same role as Antonio? Does he want someone that's got better movement than Antonio when in games we're struggling to break down teams? I'm not seeing enough. I've got to be honest, I've seen this link with 𝐘𝐿. I've seen this link with Gabriel Barbosa. These are completely different players. We were linked with Tammy Abraham in the summer. Again, a completely different player to Antonio. Diaz would fit the bill because from an outside perspective, he's in the Championship, he's hungry, he's got a point to prove, he's in good form. The money thing, I think Blackburn won around £30 million. It just won't happen with West Ham. We're not going to spend that. The player I would love on loan would be Divock Origi. It would make perfect sense. It would make to give him game time. But who knows? Moyes may have greater plans to play with a front two at West Ham. We just don't know at this stage. So I'd love to give you a concrete answer. I seriously haven't got a clue, and I won't know until the last day of the window. So we'll see what happens.
It's what it's like in January. Things change very, very quickly. I remember the window when we got in, I think January 2020, when we got in Ian Poveda and Jean-Kevin Augustin. I think all the mention before that was it'll be Che Adams would be going in for, and then Augustin comes in, and it's very different to what we were kind of expecting, and obviously completely different styles of strikers. So I think that's the thing. I think a lot of it is like who kind of comes available. I think it's part, just from an outside looking in. I think who comes available, it can.
The problem is as well.
It's like a effect, isn't it? If say Eddie Nketiah is a good example, really, because I think going into this window, he probably was definitely leaving Arsenal. I think because he was third choice. Aubameyang, Lacazette were pretty solidly first and second. Then Aubameyang obviously looks like he won't ever play for Arsenal again. All of a sudden, Nketiah's second choice. Lacazette's not exactly being very convincing up top. It's a domino effect, isn't it? Really, in January.
I agree. it's kind of stick or twist moment, is it, with some of these players? I don't know whether Moyes or the club look at it and think, well, this player's out of contract in 6 months. Can we just afford to wait? And particularly with a player like 𝐘𝐿, he's still quite raw, I think. He's obviously still young, and Moyes may like that type of project in terms of developing a striker. But then is it enough to convince him that 𝐘𝐿 can come in and do the same role as Antonio? Clearly he's not the same player, so that's not going to happen. So for me, I understand Moyes' conservatism when it comes to trying to pick strikers and make sure money's spent in the correct way. And it's been good for us so far. Our recruitment's been very good over, a 12-month period. But I think this is now the time he has to take the chance. He's got to back himself in terms of his coaching, back himself tactically, and take a risk. And if it's a loan deal, I just can't see the risk in it. We're talking £30 million and it's your first choice number 9 for 4 years. That's a different ballgame. But with players like 𝐘𝐿, which I wouldn't like at the club, it's not my preferred choice. Take a risk. At least take a risk. And if Moyes can see something in a player, 9 times out of 10, he's got a plan and it could work. So that's kind of where West Ham fans give him a lot of leeway.
No, it's interesting. I mean, look at Everton. I know a lot of my family is Everton fans, and again, one of the big things Moyes was always praised with was the recruitment side of things. He's not spending a lot, but getting high quality and coaching them to really top levels. And I think he did that with pretty much every player he works with at Everton, and he's done it at West Ham too. But before we finish, let's just talk a little bit about the last time we played, because I've got to say we lost the game in the last minute. I'll tell you what, leaving Ellen Road that day.
Every time I see that goal,
I
remember watching that goal and thinking, obviously I was buzzing. I was thinking that's sickening. It was
what
really
a game, though.
Yeah, it was a great game. It was a real great game.
Just from a pure spectacle, the game, atmosphere, it's probably, I wouldn't say one of the most memorable. It's one of those that when you're thinking back to home games, it's one that really quickly comes into my mind, really, because just how much happened in that game. It was just a mad game of footy kind of thing. I remember that VAR decision that went on for about 4 or 5 minutes where you had the goal disallowed, and it was just tackles flying in. It was just a brilliant game of footy, and we had a lot of players out that day. Are you expecting something similar? Because what I've got to say is that game compared to the previous 2 games against Moyes last season, I thought certainly second half West Ham were a lot more on the front foot, and they were trying to go a little more. You were trying to go a little more toe to toe against us, and I think possession wise, it wasn't. Again, this might be wrong, but certainly felt like on the day it wasn't quite as one-sided for us. West Ham were keeping the ball quite well, Declan Rice and that lot. I mean, you're expecting something similar. You've kind of said you think West Ham will play on the front foot, but are you expecting a game that's as end-to-end as that once again on Sunday? Because I know you said about Moyes won't want to throw the game, but I think what both managers won't want is a replay. All the games. I think that's the last thing anyone wants is a replay at this moment in time.
I think goes straight to pens, doesn't it? So hopefully we'll avoid that eventuality.
I'm not saying score an own goal if it's 0-0 with 90 minutes to go, but with a minute to go, but I do have that feeling that neither manager really wants to draw this game.
No, I agree. I mean, I'm not sure it'll be end-to-end as it was, maybe from a Leeds perspective, but certainly from a West Ham perspective. I'm not convinced we're going to have those players in transition, particularly at that time. You have to remember Fornals was in great form, Benrahma was in great form, Antonio. They were all working so well together, and a lot of those components will be out. I think it'll be a different type of game. I can see West Ham being a bit more conservative. I think Lanzini changes things in terms of build-up play. I was really encouraged, actually, against Crystal Palace, a team that are fantastic at pressing. I know they obviously scored 2 goals in the second half. It was awful defending. But for the first half in particular, I thought West Ham got the balance right in terms of being better in possession and beating presses and not making it so end-to-end. So I'm hoping that even if the personnel changes and it's Noble or Krau, or maybe it's Souček and Noble, that we've got that balance right and we can manage the game in that sense. And that's, as a team, that's where West Ham need to go, because it's tough watching us when it just feels either we're on a counter-attack or we're defensive. It's never in possession and control. It's just constantly just flick a switch and change the style of play. So I think we'll be more conservative in this game. I really do. And I think he'll work to the players' strengths. And maybe he won't. Maybe we'll try and press Leeds. I don't know. But I just feel that he's not going to be as expansive. He's not going to be on the front foot as much. And I think Moyes is just a manager that learns as he goes along and understands his players and his team. And I kind of feel that fit in with the narrative.
No, interesting stuff. But I know obviously you like to watch other teams as well. You do watch a lot of football. I do very much value you obviously your opinion on Leeds. I mean, but what have you made of Leeds this season in general? I mean, Do you think Leeds can now kick on this second bit of the season? Bamford coming back in, obviously the January window. I mean, do you feel Leeds can kick on from what you've seen?
Yeah, yes. I mean, it's so tough because the Leeds I've seen has been injury stricken, and I feel that in terms of a playing style, that the press hasn't been there, and it's not been the same Leeds that I saw last season. But you have got a point in terms of getting Bamford back with Rafinha. If Robin Koch can stay fit, Llorente, I think, like we discussed them before the whistle blows, that's a core of the team that can work. Phillips is a huge loss, but Forshaw's really impressed me since he's come in. I feel that if Leeds can strengthen in this window, if they can get 2 or 3, I'm even talking loan signings just to provide a little bit more depth. And it's tough in this window, of course. It's particularly with a Bielsa style of play and trying to integrate him with the team. Like I say, I think you will kick on, and I've seen it firsthand. I've seen you against us first half at Ellen Road, where you've been the Leeds of last season, and then it's changed. And I've seen you try and struggle with the idea of keeping consistency for 90 minutes, but I honestly believe you'll get there. And I think it's just a problem of having personnel in and out, and injuries and suspensions. When you get that consistency of personnel, I think you'll still be there. And you just can't write Leeds off, because when you're on it, you're an absolute nightmare to deal with for any team, just because of the energy and the intensity. So, listen, I know I've got a bit of a soft spot for Leeds, but I honestly think you'll be fine. I really do. And Oscar, the thing is, this Premier League has been so tight this season. It's a couple of results, and all of a sudden Leeds are 10th or 9th, and the narrative changes again. So, and it's the same for West Ham. If we drop and we're 9th, then the narrative's different. So, I wouldn't rule anything out, but January is important for you. It's important for us. We've seen today Newcastle trying to get deals in and things like that. So many teams need to get a decent bit of business done in order just to push on.
And just finally, I mean, other than Rafinha, because everyone says Rafinha, who's impressed you the most from that Leeds team? Who's the one you look at in that Leeds team outside of Rafinha you think, I'm concerned about them on Sunday if they play?
I would have said 𝐾𝐎𝐓, actually. I was kind of thinking, oh no, 𝐾𝐎𝐓's just going to... And I think 𝐾𝐎𝐓's fantastic. I think his return... And normally you talk about young players and a lot of the emphasis will be on performance, but the output from 𝐾𝐎EVH's been really crucial.
Oh, mate, he should have heard the noise. Honestly, if you couldn't see who was coming on, or the player was hidden like behind a curtain or something, and you wait and see who's coming on, you'd have thought it was Messi. In terms of the noise of the crowd and that lot, it's been a long time since I've heard a player come on with that kind of reception. I mean, it was deafening, the noise. Honestly, when Joffrey came on, you're thinking, this is an 18-year-old kid and he's only played about 5 games, but this is how special he is. This is how unbelievable a talent we've got here.
It's the way he plays makes me think that he really connects with the Leeds fans. I think when you see him taking on players, it's not easy to make that step up. I mean, every club has the same thing. They expect an under-23, throw him in, it'll be brilliant. It's not that easy. Very few players do it. The fact that he's done it and he's feeding off the crowd and he's clearly got the ability, if he was playing on Sunday, just positionally, the way he drops into little pockets of space, he's not a natural 9, but obviously the movement he has across the defensive line, it would cause Diop and Dawson a lot of nightmares. The player I've been most impressed with, actually, every time I've watched Leeds, is Forshaw. And obviously, you haven't seen a lot of him. Maybe you would have done in the past. I haven't seen him at all. And watching him in spells this season, so calm in possession, picks the right pass. Feels like he's quite press-proof. If West Ham want to go and try and press him, that could be an issue if it leaves space in behind. So I wouldn't say I'm threatened by him, because Rafinha is clearly the player that I'm really worried about, it, particularly if we play Masuaku at left-back. But Forshaw is a player that I'm interested to watch live. And it'll be interesting for West Ham to try and deal with him, because, again, like I say, if we're naive in that sense, and maybe we feel that we can press out of him and win the ball high up, and he obviously turns us and plays through us, then again, there's problems there. So I'm interested to see what he does.
It wouldn't surprise me, though, if Declan Rice and Rafinha, neither of them get a minute on the pitch. So it really wouldn't surprise me, because they're just so important to both teams that I can understand it as well. Even if we lose the game, I can understand the reason why. I mean, you've got to look at the bigger picture, is the rest of the season. I mean, is it worth the risk? And people have different opinions. That's the thing about the FA Cup. I mean, in terms of from kind of our generation kind of thing, it's maybe the FA Cup doesn't seem as important now as what it was, into maybe the 90s and early 2000s. So I still think it's an important trophy, but maybe not quite as important. I mean, I don't know if you'd agree with that or not.
Kind of. I mean, I remember being 10 watching us losing that FA Cup final against Liverpool. And
Gerrard's long range.
Gerrard final. And obviously, I think we went ahead and we scored some brilliant goals. And I thought, this is it. And at the time, maybe it was because I was a kid, maybe because it was the time, the FA Cup was the thing that you won. Football's progressed now where it's become very much, if you finish 6th place, that's a trophy. I'm still of the opinion that trophies over a European football. If West Ham finished 11th this season and won the cup, I'd take that. And I still maintain that even where we're at now. So it is important. I think it's a media thing. I think the media sort of water it down a little bit now, and the top teams, they don't go for it. And obviously you'll see a Man City, granted, they've got fantastic strength in depth. We've seen Klopp not turn up to games before. So it kind of feels like there isn't the occasion, whereas growing up, it was the thing. So I don't think that's helped. But yeah, and now we're looking at clubs where Premier League survival and the league positions are so important for the club's future and progression. So again, that's taken away from it. But yeah, Oscar, anything to win an FA Cup, it'd be unreal. Even if we could be there, do you know what I mean? Or even you talk about semi-finals and being at Wembley, just being part of it'd be mad. So, yeah.
That's what you remember, though, isn't it? Obviously, Leeds aren't in that position that West Ham are in at this moment in time. But even when we were kind of like, under David O'Leary, my early years supporting Leeds, I took a trophy over pushing for the top 4 and all that lot. I think that's my personal opinion on it. In terms of when you look back at it, in terms of physical trophies and honours, unfortunately the team didn't win, and it should have won. It had the quality to. It was unlucky not to win, but ultimately, it was a little bit of a disappointment not to win. But Corey, mate, absolute pleasure as always. Where can we find you, man?
West Ham Way on the YouTube channel. I mean, obviously we've got 2 games this week, so if you want to check out a preview from my side or at least a post-match, I'll be at the game on Sunday. I'm expecting it to be a good atmosphere, if I'm honest. I know you've been given, I think it's nearly 9,000.
9,000.
Yeah, and credit, I don't know whether it's the FA or West Ham. I think that's great. I think West Ham wrote something on the website today that was kind of important to have a lot of opposition fans there. I think it'll be a good atmosphere. So. And then we can get into the league, which I think is going to be I think it's going to be tastier, if I'm honest. It's weird for me going up on Sunday at 2:00 and then coming back the following week at the same time for the Prem. But I feel like it'll be 2 different type of games, but I'm looking forward to it, Oscar. So yeah, if anyone wants to check out that content, they can.
Check out the link in the description. I'm going to leave the link for Corey's channel in the description. Obviously, you see us regularly both on Mr. Wayman's channel as well, Just Joe. So guys, I'm going to leave it there. Absolute pleasure as always. Big thanks to Corey. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe button as well, guys. We're slowly pushing towards 25k. And thanks so much for your support, guys. See you later.